Dawn breaks over an American city in the early years of the 20th century. It is a winter morning, shortly after the turn of the century, and the air carries the mixed scents of coal smoke, damp stone, and horse sweat. Street lamps still glow faintly along a broad avenue lined with brick buildings whose windows are dark, save for a few where families have already risen. Iron wheels rattle over cobblestones as delivery wagons begin their routes. A factory whistle sounds in the distance, long and low, cutting through the cold air and signaling the start of another workday. Newspapers, printed overnight on rumbling presses, are folded and stacked on corners, their headlines announcing events from Washington, New York, Chicago, and places most Americans will never see. This is the United States in the first years of the 1900s, a nation stepping into a new century with confidence, anxiety, and unanswered questions, where everyday life unfolds between old traditions and rapidly arriving change. At the opening of the 20th century, the United States stands as a continental power with nearly 76 million people, according to the census of 1900. Most Americans still live in rural areas or small towns, though cities are growing at unprecedented speed. Immigration from Europe continues to reshape the population, bringing millions from Italy, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Russia, and the Balkans, alongside earlier arrivals from Ireland, Germany, and Scandinavia. These newcomers crowd into urban neighborhoods, often settling near factories, rail yards, and docks where work is available. The nation's mood is one of expansion and belief in progress, tempered by economic memory. The Panic of 1893 remains close in public consciousness, reminding families that prosperity can vanish quickly. Daily life for most Americans is defined by work. Agriculture still employs a large portion of the population. On farms across the Midwest and South, families rise before sunrise to tend livestock, milk cows, feed chickens, and prepare for long hours in the fields. Horses provide the primary source of power, pulling plows and wagons. Mechanized equipment exists, but it is expensive and not yet widespread. Weather governs success or failure, and a dry season or early frost can mean debt or foreclosure. Rural isolation is common, broken only by weekly trips to town or visits from traveling salesmen and mail carriers. In the cities, industrial labor dominates. Men, women, and children work in factories producing steel, textiles, garments, machinery, and consumer goods. The workday often lasts 10 to 12 hours, 6 days a week. Wages are low and workplace safety regulations are minimal. Injuries are frequent and compensation is rare, yet factory jobs offer something agriculture often cannot: steady cash income. This draws families from farms and immigrants from abroad, accelerating urban growth. Tenement housing rises quickly to meet demand, often built cheaply and without adequate sanitation. Overcrowding contributes to the spread of disease, including tuberculosis and influenza, which claim thousands of lives each year. Children's labor is an accepted part of the economy. In coal mines, textile mills, and canneries, boys and girls work long hours, performing dangerous tasks for a fraction of an adult's wage. Reformers document these conditions through photography and journalism, publishing reports that circulate widely. Their efforts begin to influence public opinion, laying groundwork for future legislation, though change remains slow and uneven. Education laws exist in many states, but enforcement is inconsistent, especially among poor families who rely on their children's income. The American economy in the 1900s is marked by consolidation and corporate growth. Large trusts dominate industries such as oil, steel, railroads, and meatpacking. Figures like John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie are widely known, symbols of immense wealth accumulated through industrial enterprise. Supporters argue that these corporations bring efficiency and stability. Critics warn of monopolistic practices and political influence. In Washington, debate intensifies over the role of government in regulating business. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 exists, but its enforcement has been limited. This tension between free enterprise and public oversight defines much of the era's political discourse. The presidency of Theodore Roosevelt, beginning in 1901, following the assassination of William McKinley, reflects these national debates. Roosevelt speaks openly about the need for a square deal between labor, business, and the public. His administration pursues antitrust cases and supports certain regulatory measures, particularly in railroads and food safety. The passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act in 1906 follows public outrage over unsanitary conditions revealed in investigative reports. These laws mark a shift in federal involvement in everyday life, affecting what Americans eat and how products are labeled. Transportation in the early 20th century is undergoing rapid transformation. Railroads knit the nation together, moving goods and people across vast distances. Passenger trains connect cities on fixed schedules, while freight trains carry coal, grain, lumber, and manufactured goods. In cities, electric streetcars replace horse-drawn trolleys, allowing workers to live farther from their places of employment. This expansion contributes to the growth of suburbs, though automobile ownership remains limited. Cars exist, but they are expensive, unreliable, and primarily owned by the wealthy. Roads are often unpaved, making travel slow and hazardous in poor weather. Communication is advancing as well. The telegraph remains essential for long-distance messaging, particularly in business and government. The telephone, still a novelty in many households, is spreading gradually, connecting offices and affluent homes. Newspapers serve as the primary source of information for most Americans. Large city papers publish multiple editions daily, filled with local news, national politics, serialized fiction, and advertisements. Literacy rates are high, and reading is a common leisure activity, especially in the evenings after work. Home life reflects both tradition and adaptation. Most houses lack electricity, relying on oil lamps or gas lighting. Coal or wood stoves provide heat and are used for cooking. Indoor plumbing is not universal, particularly in rural areas and older urban buildings. Water is often carried by hand, and bathing may occur weekly rather than daily. Women bear primary responsibility for domestic labor, which is physically demanding and time-consuming. Laundry involves boiling water and scrubbing by hand. Food preparation requires careful planning and preservation, especially before widespread refrigeration. Social roles are clearly defined, though they are beginning to be questioned. Men are expected to provide financially, while women manage households and raise children. Middle and upper-class women increasingly participate in clubs, charitable organizations, and reform movements. The women's suffrage movement is active, holding conventions and publishing pamphlets advocating voting rights. Several Western states grant women the vote during this period, while others resist. The national debate continues, reflecting broader questions about citizenship and democracy. Race relations in the 1900s are marked by deep inequality and institutionalized discrimination. In the South, segregation laws known as Jim Crow govern public life, enforcing separation in schools, transportation, and public spaces. African Americans face barriers to voting through poll taxes, literacy tests, and intimidation. Violence, including lynching, remains a grim reality. Despite these conditions, Black communities establish schools, churches, newspapers, and businesses, fostering resilience and cultural life. Leaders such as Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois articulate differing strategies for advancement, engaging in public debate over education, civil rights, and economic opportunity. In the West, the legacy of frontier expansion continues to shape life. Native American communities live under federal policies that restrict land ownership and cultural practices. Reservation systems and boarding schools aim to assimilate indigenous children into Euro-American society, often through coercive means. These policies disrupt traditional ways of life and cause lasting harm, though they are widely accepted by policymakers of the time. Western states experience growth driven by mining, agriculture, and railroads, attracting settlers and investment while displacing earlier inhabitants. Religion remains a central feature of American life. Churches serve not only as places of worship but as community centers, hosting social events, lectures, and charitable activities. Protestant denominations dominate, though Catholic and Jewish congregations grow with immigration. Religious leaders often engage with social issues, including temperance, labor conditions, and moral reform. The temperance movement gains strength, arguing that alcohol contributes to poverty and domestic violence. Local and state restrictions on alcohol sales appear in various regions, foreshadowing national action in the decades ahead. Education in the early 20th century is expanding, particularly at the elementary level. Public schools operate in most communities, teaching basic literacy, arithmetic, and civic knowledge. High school attendance increases, though it remains far from universal. Curricula emphasize discipline, patriotism, and practical skills. Colleges and universities grow in number and influence, offering training in engineering, medicine, law, and teaching. Higher education remains accessible primarily to men from middle and upper-class backgrounds, though women's colleges and co-educational institutions are becoming more common. Entertainment reflects both technological innovation and long-standing tradition. Vaudeville theaters offer live performances combining music, comedy, and drama. Traveling shows and circuses draw large crowds, particularly in smaller towns. Motion pictures emerge as a new form of amusement, initially shown in Nickelodeons for a small fee. These short films depict everyday scenes, news events, and staged stories, captivating audiences and hinting at a future industry. Sports, including baseball, boxing, and horse racing, attract widespread interest, with professional leagues and organized competitions gaining popularity. Health and medicine at the turn of the century exist in a transitional state. Scientific understanding of germs and disease is improving, leading to better sanitation and public health measures in some cities. Vaccination campaigns reduce the spread of smallpox, while water treatment systems lower rates of waterborne illness. However, many treatments remain ineffective or harmful, and access to medical care varies widely. Doctors often make house calls, and hospitals are used primarily by the poor or those with severe injuries. Life expectancy is significantly lower than in later decades, influenced by infectious disease, workplace accidents, and limited medical intervention. Internationally, the United States is increasingly involved beyond its borders. The Spanish-American War of 1898 marks a turning point, resulting in American control over territories such as Puerto Rico and the Philippines. Debates over imperialism continue into the 1900s, raising questions about national identity and responsibility. Military presence overseas introduces Americans to global politics, while trade and diplomacy expand. The construction of the Panama Canal, begun in 1904, symbolizes American engineering ambition and strategic interest, employing thousands of workers and drawing attention to issues of labor, disease, and international cooperation. Within the nation, migration patterns shift. African Americans begin moving from rural southern areas toward northern cities, seeking industrial jobs and escape from segregation, though this movement accelerates later. Immigrants cluster in ethnic neighborhoods, maintaining languages and customs while adapting to American society. Mutual aid societies, churches, and labor unions provide support in unfamiliar environments. Unions grow in strength, organizing strikes and negotiations to demand higher wages and safer conditions. These efforts are often met with resistance from employers and, at times, government intervention. Government institutions during this period are evolving to meet new demands. Federal agencies expand modestly, collecting data, enforcing regulations, and managing infrastructure projects. State and local governments oversee schools, police, and public works, though corruption remains a persistent issue in some cities. Reform movements advocate civil service reforms, transparency, and efficiency, seeking to reduce the influence of political machines. These efforts reflect a belief that government can be improved through rational planning and professional management. Technology continues to reshape daily experience. Electricity begins to illuminate streets and public buildings in major cities, extending productive hours and improving safety. Factories adopt new machinery that increases output but also accelerates the pace of work. Innovations in printing, photography, and sound recording alter how information and culture are shared. These changes are unevenly distributed, creating disparities between urban and rural life, wealth and poverty, access and exclusion. The rhythm of time itself feels different. Without widespread personal clocks or standardized schedules outside transportation and industry, many people structure their days by natural light and community routines. Church bells, factory whistles, and train timetables provide markers. Sundays are generally reserved for rest and worship, with businesses closed and streets quieter. Holidays such as Independence Day and Thanksgiving are observed with parades, family gatherings, and public ceremonies, reinforcing national identity. As the decade progresses, optimism coexists with underlying tension. Economic growth brings opportunity but also inequality. Industrial accidents and labor disputes reveal the human cost of progress. Social reformers push for change, while traditionalists resist interference. The nation's population grows, cities expand upward and outward, and the distance between different American experiences widens. Rural farmers, urban laborers, business owners, and professionals all inhabit the same country, yet their daily realities differ sharply. By the close of the first decade of the 20th century, America stands firmly within the modern age, though the shape of that future remains uncertain. The foundations of later transformations are already in place: regulatory government, mass production, urban living, and global engagement. For the people living through these years, history is not a concept but a lived condition, experienced in the weight of a coal shovel, the hum of a factory floor, the quiet of a farmhouse kitchen, and the crowded streets of immigrant neighborhoods. Each day carries the momentum of change, pushing the nation forward into a century that will test its ideals, institutions, and people in ways few can yet imagine.